Now, if you've ever struggled with brain fog, you know it can be a really big deal and it can be super frustrating. And for me, a couple years ago, when I was dealing with brain fog, it really had a huge impact on my confidence. And if you're not quite sure what brain fog is, it can be kind of a fuzzy feeling in your mind or a heavy feeling, or for some people, they feel hungover even though they haven't had anything to drink. And sometimes you can struggle for words. Sometimes a task that would normally take you 5 to 10 minutes takes you 25, 30 minutes. And it can just be really hard to function. So today I want to talk about one of the specific causes of brain fog and some things that you can do about it. And there's a lot of different causes. In general, when you get inflammation in the brain, that causes some kind of symptom like brain fog, or it could be anxiety, could be depression, it could be a migraine headache. But inflammation in the brain is not a good thing. And a specific source of inflammation comes from permeability in the blood-brain barrier. So you've probably heard of leaky gut. That's permeability in your intestinal tract. That's gut permeability. But we also get permeability in the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is designed, it's meant to keep toxins out of your brain. So when you have permeability in the blood-brain barrier, toxins get in your brain, they cause inflammation, then you get these different symptoms. Now, a cause of permeability in blood-brain barrier is exposure to EMFs. And a really disturbing trend I'm seeing today, a lot of people really love their Apple AirPods, and there's other generic brands of these wireless earbuds. But I'm going to share this image, and if you look at the image, the reading on that, it's I think it's about 34. I don't have it right in front of me, but it's way off the chart. Like, you don't want, for radiation exposure, RF, radio frequency exposure by your head, you don't want that above 1, let alone around 34. I think there's a peak at 45, which is way higher than you want exposed to your head. And the way these earbuds work is the signal goes from your phone to one of the earbuds, and then the other earbud this earbud sends the signal to this earbud. So what's a straight line between your ears? It's going right through your brain. That causes inflammation, and we know from rat studies that when rat brains are exposed to radiation from cell phones, from other sources, that causes permeability in the blood-brain barrier. Now, humans' brains are a lot more complex than rat brains. So we need a lot more things functioning. There's a lot more reactions going on in your brain every femtosecond to make our life possible, to make our level of complexity, our ability to think, all the different operations running in our body simultaneously to keep us optimal. And when you get inflammation in the brain, that affects a lot of those processes. Now, the other thing to be aware of is rats have a much higher resistance to radiation. You probably heard people joke, if there was ever a nuclear fallout, the only things that would survive are cockroaches and rats. And the reason is they both are very resistant to radiation. So they're experimenting on rats who are resistant to radiation. They're having these negative effects. Humans are less resistant to radiation. So the potential effects on humans are probably far worse. And while they don't do laboratory studies on humans for this because it would be considered inhumane, we're all basically test subjects right now because we're all exposed to this radio frequency radiation on some level. So a lot of it, unfortunately, it's out of our control unless you find a way to go and live in the middle of nowhere. There is a place in West Virginia where they have some equipment there that can't have any interference by electromagnetic fields. So there's, they don't allow cell phones there. They don't allow Wi-Fi. They don't have any cell phone towers there. And people that are EHS, electro hypersensitive, actually go and live there because that's one of the few places in the world today you can go and not be bombarded with radiation. But for the most part, if you want to live in a normal town and interact with society, you're bombarded on some level with this radiation, which causes permeability in the blood-brain barrier. It also causes nerve damage in the basal ganglia, in the hippocampus, in other regions of the brain. But you do have some control over the levels of exposure. So for example, back to that example with the AirPods, that's a choice. You don't have to use those AirPods and put them in your ear. And a lot of people, like friends of mine, when I see them using them, I let them know and I send them that image just to say, hey, are you aware that you're exposing your brain to this level of radiation? And some people kind of get pissed at me and they're just like, ah. And other people are like, oh my God, I had no idea. So Apple is not doing these studies to see, hey, are these AirPods safe? And maybe they are safe. I have no idea. All I know is I've seen this image with measuring the amount of radiation that's being put off right by the brain. And I haven't seen any safety studies showing that these things are safe, not even on rats. So that's something you want to avoid. A good alternative are air tube earphones. So with air tubes, it's a little bit like a stethoscope where the wire goes up to a certain part of the earbud, and then it's just a hollow tube like a stethoscope. And that hollow tube transmits the rest of the audio signal. And while it may not be Dolby surround sound, the quality is good enough to have a conversation or to listen to your music if you're traveling. Now, when it comes to radiation, distance is your friend. And the farther you can get from the source, the lower the levels of radiation that you're exposed to. So another main source that a lot of us are exposed to today is our Wi-Fi router. So a lot of people, especially today, they're working out of a home office. Fewer people are going into the office. But if you have a desk job and you're working out of your home office, a lot of people, I observe when I go to their houses, they have their Wi-Fi modem right in their home office. And lots of times it's literally right next to them. So that you're getting very high levels of exposure all day. So you want to move that as far away as possible. But you just want to take an inventory of all the different sources of wireless radiation and keep these away, because these studies show that very low levels of radiation are causing this blood-brain barrier permeability, like the distance of you holding your cell phone. So for me, when I talk on my phone, I'm on speakerphone. I'm holding it like this. And even at that level, I am getting some exposure to my brain, though it is much lower than me holding the phone up to my brain, and it's much lower than using those earbuds where you're getting both sides of your brain and right through your brain radiated. So I just wanted to bring these things to your attention. If brain fog is an issue for you, then this is something you're going to want to pay attention to, and you can do an experiment. You can ditch your AirPods for a while. You can talk on speakerphone. You can minimize your exposure to different sources of radiation to your brain. This also happens with 60 hertz, that's the frequency of the electrical wires in the US. In the UK, I think it's 50 hertz. But another source that can cause this blood-brain barrier permeability is the wires, the electrical wires running through the walls in your house. So if your headboard is right against the wall where wires could be running through, just moving your headboard, if you can do 12 inches away, that's ideal. But even 6 inches is going to offer you some improvement. And if you can't do that, maybe you can have the head of your bed the other way. It might look a little funny, but anything you can do to get your head further away from sources of radiation is going to protect your brain. Because the more exposure you have, that increases the permeability in this blood-brain barrier. That means more toxins get in your brain. More toxins in your brain, that means more inflammation. That means more symptoms. And the longer this goes on, this puts you closer and closer to neurodegeneration. And these diseases, they're really exploding today. Diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, ALS. There are Huntington's disease. But there are these different diseases. Their numbers are going up, not going down. So there's something in our environment. It's not a genetic thing. It's something environmental that is causing these diseases to increase and to show up at a younger age than they historically have. Like when I was a kid, people did get Alzheimer's disease. it didn't show up until people were in their 80s or 90s for the most part. Now we're having it show up in people as young as in their 30s. It's rare, but it's happening. The numbers have gone up by 300% in the past 5-10 years. People are getting it in their 40s, 50s, in record numbers. So if you care about your brain, if you want to avoid brain fog, if you want to have really good focus, then you want to eliminate these sources of radiation from your brain that are causing this blood-brain barrier permeability. And when I was looking at some of the research on this, some of the other things that were highlighted is we have a blood-ocular barrier. So that's protecting toxins from getting into our eyes. So when you hold your cell phone by your head, that could be causing permeability in this blood-ocular barrier. There is the blood placenta barrier. So for women, if you're carrying your cell phone in a front pocket, if you're using a laptop on your lap and you're pregnant, that is causing permeability in the placenta, and toxins are getting in there. They're going to impact your baby on some level. Also, there is a blood testicular barrier. There is a blood ovary barrier. So I used to carry my phone in my front pocket. At one point for my job, I had to have a secure phone. So I had a work phone and I had my iPhone. So I used to carry a phone in each front pocket. And I was trying to get pregnant at the time. I was trying to impregnate my ex-wife. But I got my sperm measured and I had a low count, poor motility. They basically swam in circles. They didn't get to their objective, which was the egg. And we never got pregnant, despite doing in vitro and doing all these modern medical interventions. Didn't work. I now have a 4-year-old kid. But my point is you don't want to be radiating these different organs in your body, because they all have the radiation in itself causes inflammation, but you're also opening that barrier, allowing toxins to get in. So if you're a man, you plan on having kids. If you're a woman, you plan on having kids. That radiation, if you're a man, it's impacting your sperm. If you're a woman, it's impacting your eggs. Maybe you say, hey, well, I don't want kids. Well, if you're a man, that's also impacting your testosterone. So if you want to pack on muscle, if you want to feel motivated, if you want strong bones, women, you need testosterone too. If you want strong bones, then you want to be protecting your sex organs. And for many other reasons. I'm sure at some point you're going to want to use them for pleasure or for reproduction. But this is something that you want to protect. Now, one of the keys to enhancing these different barriers is making butyrate. So butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid, and as you increase butyrate production, that actually makes these junctions tighter. And the way you do that, the way I do it, is eating fiber. So not fiber that I buy in a jar, but eating raw vegetables. And a really killer combination is lean protein with raw vegetables. The amino acids are really good to heal those junctions in your small intestine from the protein. And then these undigestible fibers, when they get into your large intestine, they feed a certain kind of bacteria, bifidobacteria, which then when it breaks that down, it makes metabolites feeding other bacteria. So you're increasing your diversity of your microbiome, but you're also making butyrate. That's going to protect the lining of your gut to decrease gut permeability, but it's also going to improve your blood-brain barrier. And while I haven't seen evidence, I'm assuming it's also going to improve these other barriers: the ocular blood barrier, the placenta, the testicular, the ovary, all these different barriers that protect our different organs from toxins getting in, causing inflammation, and causing just all sorts of issues with our health. Let me look at my notes here. I think I covered everything I wanted to talk about. But one more thing. The other thing that these levels of radiation impact, one is melatonin. So you need melatonin to get into a deep restorative sleep. Melatonin is also a very important antioxidant for the brain. So a function of sleep is keeping your brain healthy. When you don't get into a deep sleep, that you're not getting that, it's kind of like you're not running your dishwasher. You have a lymphatic system which clears out toxins in your brain. It gets them into your circulatory system, so it can either take them to your kidneys if they're water soluble, or your liver if it's fat soluble, to get these toxins out of your brain. It's kind of like the lymphatic system of your brain, but it's called the lymphatic system. So you don't get that, we don't get a deep sleep, you don't get that brain cleansing, that detoxification of the brain. You don't wake up feeling rested, like you can get up and conquer your day, which is a common complaint I hear today. A lot of people, they're waking up, they're very tired, they need some coffee to get going, and they're still not 100% throughout the whole day. And it's no way to live. I lived that way for many, many years. You can turn that around. One of the ways to turn this around is by stop exposing your brain and your body to these frequencies of light, but also making more butyrate. So reduction in melatonin. The other thing is it causes leptin resistance. So leptin is your master hormone. It tells your body, it makes your body, your brain aware of your energy status. So it tells your brain, okay, we have enough energy, we don't have to make any more, we don't have to store energy. When you're leptin resistant, then that communication doesn't work. You store excess energy as fat. So if you have a lot of excess weight, guess what? Chances are you're leptin resistant. If you're super, super skinny, guess what? Chances are you're leptin resistant. So that's another impact of exposure to this radiation. So really learn what you need to do to identify these different sources, to eliminate them or minimize them as much as you can from your environment. Yes, I use these different things. I use a cell phone. I have an iPhone. I watch, sometimes I use different devices that are Bluetooth, but I'm aware of the impacts they have on my health, and I keep my distance. I keep them far away from me. And I go to a lot of people's houses that have these things all over the place. And I try to make them aware of it. Some people don't want to hear about it. I've provided you the information. As always, I've attached some research. You can go down in the comments if you want to dig into the research. This is a very, very small sampling of thousands of research papers out there showing the harmful effects of electromagnetic fields, radio frequency radiation, which is an EMF that you get from your cell phone, from your Bluetooth device, from Wi-Fi. Now 5G is rolling out. So some things to be aware of. Hope this helps. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment below. If you like this, give it a like, give it a share, subscribe, and thanks so much for checking this out. I'll see you again real soon.